optimism is coming from their belief that they can execute in the short term. But these risks that are more prominent, more than ever before, and more volatile are actually over the medium to longer term. And therefore, they're not as concerned because they can't control. So their focus is very much on execution. I'll give you just an analogy. When people try to lose weight, they would say their confidence to lose 10 pounds in the next year may be not so high, but over the next 3 years, sure, no problem.
Indeed.
Yeah, so I think the CEOs are trying to keep their people focused on the execution in the short term and keep their board and management discussions around those strategic issues, and particularly on those they can influence. Because many of those risks, they can't control.
So I would like to ask you, what are the issues or the risks that are keeping CEOs awake at night?
So when you look at the CEO survey, they're clearly concerned about the fragility of the economy. Different parts of the world can move pretty quickly, negatively or positively, and how can they scale up or scale down? So the agility is very important to react to that. The second thing is the regulation, and they are looking for, can I get more certainty in what the rules of the game are to play in the business community? And the third thing that you see quite a bit is the skill set gap that exists, and there's various regions of the world where the skill sets aren't there, so that is actually having an impact now on their confidence over the short and medium term.
You say the top choice increasingly for a lot of CEOs for growth is the United States, but the US is also seeing a new market evolve under President-elect Donald Trump. Is that in contrast then? Because many people believe that the US will be more inward-looking, more protectionist, more populist in that sense.
Yeah, so what you have is a bit of an anomaly between what perception is around where President Trump and candidly the Republican Party at large will go. And what CEOs outside of the U.S. are banking on is the consumer confidence, the resilience of the economy, the innovation that comes from it, the rule of law that allows them to execute with that certainty, and that trumps, no disrespect and no analogy or pun intended, the concerns about the protectionism that may be coming. And again, that may be coming is over the next couple of years. So I think it's something to watch that they're mindful of, but again, this is why it's important for them to pivot to this type of opportunities that exist in the U.S. or perhaps elsewhere around the world.
So quick questions on India before I let you go. I know you're a man much in demand, but the top choice for growth dropped from 18% to 7% in the last 6 years. What has happened? Are people not believers in Modi anymore? Has he not walked the talk? Are people getting impatient? How do you read that?
Yeah, so a couple of years ago where we had India and the willingness of CEOs to invest in India, I think you saw two things. One is the macro trends that were usually opportunistic in terms of the opportunities that are there for CEOs. And second, you did have Modi come in with a change program. And I think what now you have is two things. One is, has that change program really brought the fruits to bear for those that have been looking inside, so has much change that happened, of which there's a question. Not to say it's not possible, but there's a question. And second is whether or not the kind of systemic certainty is needed for them to operate relative to other business communities and countries. And that's a little concerning when you look at the system itself as to whether that stability, resiliency, and continuity is actually existing today. So I think it's causing some to look at India saying, relative to the rest of the world, maybe I wait a little while and play for a medium term.
So maybe the CEOs in India are a little more confident than the people outside who would like to invest in India. But, you say 70% of India's CEOs are very confident of their company's growth in the next 12 months. This is obviously up 64% last year. I'm a little surprised here because there was demonetization and many people thought growth will take a hit, even for corporates. What's eluding that trend?
Yeah, so I think you've got a number of negatives like demonetization and other things like it, but you also have a number of positives, which is the consumer demand that's coming, the infrastructure that's needed and the like, that's causing them to see both in the results locally when you know how to execute in that marketplace as well as the potential going forward as a real opportunity for them. And I think the trade-offs and the positives are outweighing the negatives right now.
So 55% of India's CEOs believe that the US is going to be the most, actually 55% US will be the largest and the most important market, and yet there are points of concern, whether it's IT that has a lot of exposure or whether it's pharma. How should these companies be prepared? Are they losing sleep over that just yet?
Yeah, I think some organizations are losing sleep over it and questioning what they do strategically. Do I do an M&A transaction to get those skill sets needed to think about the changing world of the digitization implications and my own relevancy going forward? So I would say losing sleep is one thing, talking about it in the boardroom is another, and then actioning it with different activity to right-size their organization, get the focus, get the M&A, and get the skill sets to be successful in the future going forward.
My last two questions. 81% of the CEOs polled said that, and they cited regulations as a big point of concern in India. Have things not changed on the ground, or is it taking perhaps just too long? Because the whole idea was maximum governance, minimum government.
I think some things have changed, but but the question is the interpretation going to be consistently applied? And so while you might have some changes in the regulation, the question's always been around how they're interpreted, how they're enforced, and then what the litigation issues may be. So I don't think the proof is in the pudding yet in terms of the certainty that they're looking for.
Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/ETNow and don't forget to click the like button. You can also follow us on Twitter at ETNowLive. To stay updated with all our programming, hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel by logging on to youtube.com/user/ETNow.